On March 25, 1911, hundreds of workers reported for another ordinary Saturday at New York City's Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Most were teenage immigrant girls. Many had crossed an ocean hoping for a better life. By the end of that afternoon, 123 women and 23 men, 146 people total, would be dead. Some burned alive. Others jumped from 8th, 9th, and 10th floor windows rather than face the flames. Among the horrified crowd watching from the street stood a young woman named Frances Perkins. She would later say that what she witnessed that day changed the course of her life. Let's turn the clock back to 1911 and discover how Frances Perkins changed the lives of millions. If you want to see more incredible stories like this one, subscribe so you don't miss a single one. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was a true sweatshop. Young employees sat in cramped spaces, sewing hour after hour. Most were immigrants who didn't speak English. Depending on the season, they worked up to 14 hours a day during the week, and 8 hours on some weekends. The owners refused to install a sprinkler system or take any fire safety precautions whatsoever. It started small, a wastebasket used for fabric scraps on the 8th floor. But the room was lined with flammable tissue paper patterns hanging from the ceiling and fabric scraps piled across the floor. The flames jumped. The papers caught. As the paper patterns ignited, they burning paper rained down onto the fabric scraps and wooden waste bins. And within minutes, the fire had spread to the 9th and 10th floors. Then came the worst discovery of all. The exit doors were locked. The owners kept them locked during work hours to prevent unauthorized breaks and stop workers from stealing. Desperate to escape, workers pried open the freight elevator doors and packed up to 12 people at a time inside. The elevator made the trip just 4 times before the heat melted the cables. Those left behind threw themselves into the shaft, landing on top of the elevator car and making it impossible for anyone else to use. The fire escapes, narrow and poorly maintained, buckled and collapsed under the weight of fleeing workers. Some on the 10th floor managed to reach the roof. Some jumped from it. Fire trucks couldn't reach above the 6th floor. There wasn't enough water pressure to fight the blaze above that. In less than 18 minutes, it was over. 146 people were dead. When a mass funeral was planned for the victims, nearly 400,000 people marched through the streets of New York in silence. The fire shocked the nation and exposed the brutal, dangerous conditions inside American factories. Within months, New York City inspectors began checking factories across the city and found that hundreds were just as unsafe. The tragedy sparked a sweeping campaign of workplace reform. Nearly 30 new laws were passed, covering minimum wage, fire safety, working hours, and child labor. Frances Perkins was already fighting for safer workplaces before that day. But after witnessing the Triangle fire, everything changed. She later said it was the moment the New Deal was born in her mind. She helped push through major labor reform legislation in New York, including limits on working hours, fire safety standards, and restrictions on child labor. She then joined the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt when he was governor of New York. In 1929, he appointed her as New York's first ever industrial commissioner, making her the head of the entire New York State Department of Labor. In 1933, President Roosevelt appointed Frances Perkins Secretary of Labor, making her the first woman ever to serve in a U.S. cabinet position. Not only was she the first, she served for 12 years, from 1933 to 1945, the longest tenure of any Secretary of Labor in American history. By the time the Great Depression hit, millions of Americans were out of work, and many were starving. Frances was a key architect of the New Deal, built on 3 pillars: relief, immediate emergency help for the unemployed and the poor, providing food, shelter, and jobs; recovery, temporary programs to restart consumer demand and get agriculture, businesses, and the economy moving again; reform, permanent changes to the financial and social systems to make sure a catastrophe like this could never happen again. She helped create the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Progress Administration, putting millions of unemployed men and women to work building and maintaining national parks, schools, roads, and public infrastructure. She also helped establish the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which funneled billions of dollars to states to fund local work relief projects and provide direct aid to those in need. In 1934, she chaired the Committee on Economic Security, laying the blueprint for the entire Social Security program, including old age pensions, survivor benefits, and unemployment insurance. The Social Security Act passed in 1935. In 1938, she helped design the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established the federal minimum wage, the 40-hour work week, and federal bans on abusive child labor. After leaving the cabinet, she served on the U.S. Civil Service Commission from 1946 to 1952, focusing on fair hiring practices, fighting discrimination in federal employment, and ensuring jobs were earned on merit. In her later years, she taught at Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations and published her memoir, The Roosevelt I Knew, in 1946. Frances Perkins died on May 14, 1965, in New York City. She was 85 years old. Frances Perkins left an incredible legacy. She is regarded as one of the most influential women in American political history. The U.S. Department of Labor headquarters in Washington, D.C. bears her name, the Frances Perkins Building. She has been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, among other honors. But perhaps her greatest legacy is this. She stood on a sidewalk in 1911 and watched 146 people lose their lives, and then spent the rest of her life making sure it would never happen again. Every minimum wage, every 40-hour work week, every child kept out of a dangerous factory, every retiree who collects Social Security. Frances Perkins helped make it all possible. Some heroes survive disasters. Others spend the rest of their lives making sure they never happen again. If this story inspired you, join us as we continue uncovering the lives of women who changed the world. Subscribe to Heroines of History and keep the light of history alive. And let us know in the comments who your favorite heroine is. Bye for now.